How long have you been working with your current processor?
Oh, that's a nightmare, to be honest. I hope they never
Really?
listen. Yeah, so northeast Oklahoma, which is where we're at, actually really most of Oklahoma has no chicken processor. Um, and there's a pretty large amount of us here that are doing meat birds. One of the closest ones is like an hour and a half to 2 hours south of us, but their price per bird is astronomical.
This is the Farm Hop Life Podcast, a traveling homestead family. I'm Matt DeRosier. On the Farm Hop Life Podcast, we learn what it takes to grow your own food from everyday people. Could be a college student, grows tomatoes and salad greens on their apartment patio, a former VP of marketing for Del Taco now raising cattle in Montana, or someone who hasn't had a homestead in over 10 years. This show is aimed at teaching you what it takes to make homesteading work for you, that we all make mistakes, we all have bad days, but we can reach out and help one another thrive, and giving you the confidence needed to go feed yourself. That's definitely not the first time that has happened, where like, hey, we got to reschedule because this came up. And like whenever it's farm related, it's like
I
perfect
know.
reason.
Well, and
Excellent excuse.
I kind of hate it though because like I had somebody that was going to come to the farm recently. They had like family in town and the kids were so excited and it was like that day was the day that we got the call that the feed was ready. And it was supposed to rain for like 4 days after that, which means like that was the only day we could go get the feed because we put it in big feed sacks on the back of the trailer and it's like a
Mm.
2 hour drive from where we mill. And so it was like that
Oh,
was our
wow.
only option. And I felt really bad to reschedule, but I'm like, we can't drive with feed when it's raining because then it's ruined. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I actually just dumped a bag of moldy chicken feed that had been sitting around. So I have 55 gallon drums with a
Same.
locking ring on the top,
Hmm.
and that's what I had been keeping my chicken feed in, and
Hmm.
it's been working awesome until last year,
Hmm.
where it was really wet it was abnormally wet, and I think some condensation had gotten inside and it started to mold some of that chicken feed with no way for it to escape. And so that's the only time I've had a problem of any sort. Like obviously it keeps rain, snow, rodents, like all of it. It just um, doesn't keep out condensation.
Yeah. I did. I lifted the lid one time. It had rained, and those metal barrels have like the lid is not flush. It has like a little dip in it. And I
Yes.
like lifted the lid and just poured all rainwater right into the feed. And I was like, so I'm sitting
Oh
there like
crap!
trying to
Yeah.
use only the wet feed. Like, because it's like you leave a little moisture in, and like you said, like it luckily it's almost like cat litter in a way sometimes. It kind of clumps together so you can
Yeah,
like
cakes.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, that
but
makes sense.
I know
Yeah, you
that's
kind of
it's
got to take that lid and flip it almost
I
like,
know. I
yeah.
got I learned my lesson. I also that was the same lid that I like took my phone one time and like set it on it and it had rained. It's like in 3 inches of water and I was like, I ever learn anything? But
I'm assuming that you fixed your phone or like it was fine because it was
I
quick.
mean the iPhone I feel like at this point, like it doesn't you can't like deep dive with it, but I think it's like
Sure.
water resistant or whatever they
Yeah.
say it. So it doesn't get ruined. I think you like it muffles the microphone for a little bit. But anyways,
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to my Android. So like I was washing dishes and I don't know why I had my phone on me, but I had dropped it right in the crock pot. And so I was like,
mm,
"Oh no." And just like
yeah.
grabbed it and threw it in some rice, and I think we took it out of the rice because we have some of those like desiccant
Hmm.
packets, like moisture absorbers. And so threw it in a plastic bag with two of those and left it in there pretty much all day. And yeah, the
Yeah.
microphone was messed up for a little bit, but ended up being fine.
Yeah. Just move on. So
So I was trying to remember earlier today exactly how we connected on TikTok. And if I remember correctly, I had that video about Smithfield pork and like where it comes from and all that
mhm.
stuff. And you made some comment like, this is why we raise our own chickens. And I didn't even bother looking into your profile. I'm like, that's enough
Mhm.
of a reason to interview somebody, and then I didn't realize, you guys actually I try not to go too deep into somebody's profile, only because then it kind of ruins all of the questions. Like, I know too much about
Yeah, if you already know, and then it's not like an actual conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems like you guys have a sizable operation, because I've seen videos since then, like, we're going to do 6,000 chickens this year. I'm like, holy crap. So
I mean, I'm sure, sizable is obviously very, subjective.
relative. Yeah.
Sizable to where we started, sizable to the industry. But, I mean, it's moving, it's going.
Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. How did you guys get started into, like, did you like start homesteading and then like, hey, let's ramp this up into a full-fledged farm, or how did that start?
Yeah, so I mean, when we made the like jump, the move, the wing it and do it, I mean, that's really what it is. And like, I don't try to like dramatize that anymore, but like, we didn't grow up in agriculture at all. I didn't even do 4-H. I lived in a neighborhood, and so did Dustin. But we wanted land, and we wanted to. I don't even know that we really went into it and said we want to homestead. I think it was like we kind of wanted just some land to just kind of do whatever we thought, and that kind of evolved even after getting on the land. And that's something that people ask me all the time, like, were you looking for specific things when you found that land? And I'm like, I don't really know if we knew. Now 2 years in, I could probably be the best real estate agent out there for, I mean, like, I could be a great real estate agent for homestead, because I have this whole list that's like, these things are more important than these things. And like, maybe we had a little bit of that. Like, we were, we would like this home and this land, but Dustin would be like, well, if we ever wanted a shop, it's going to cost this amount of money. So like, we were kind of looking at stuff like that. But to kind of speed up the question, yeah, we started homesteading. So it was like, we brought home 4 pigs and 5 sheep. I said, what are we doing with them? And Dustin was like, let's just go. So yeah, I will admit that we definitely winged that part, but our motto has kind of been like, do enough research to not put yourself in a bind or endanger animals. And then the rest, you just kind of are learning. I mean, we learned very quickly that like a cow got out of that gate. Like, you learned it one time. It's not like we don't live in a place where it got out and ran into the highway and died. Like, we did have to like get it back in.
Sure.
So yeah, I would say that we like started off homesteading. It was like, oh, this would be fun to see if we could raise our own chickens. So we started with like 25. And then it was like, well, if we could do 25, maybe we should try 50. We're very big about like, what are the numbers? What's the labor? What's the feed? Like, we track everything. And so it was like, we kind of ran the numbers of what it would be to do 50. And then it was like, well, if we can do 50, we can do 100. That gets us a price break, and maybe we can sell some of them. And then it was like, well, if we did 100, then we could do a round of 300. And if we did a round of 300, we could do around a 600 times 3 tractors. And then before, I mean, I won't say like before we knew it, we were, had a full customer base. Like, no, there was definitely intention involved. We have always been on top of our numbers. We have not just kind of thrown a product out there. Like, we know our numbers involved in it. So we were making profit. Now, don't let that fool you. Cash in, cash out very quickly. But we were making profit still. And then we just grew a customer base. We got into a couple of stores with like wholesale accounts, which was kind of a decision that we made despite the industry recommendation. There's a lot of like homestead / small farmers that really talk about like pulling away from wholesale because you are creating your own competition, or you're kind of watering down the market. And I just viewed it a different way. I have a totally different way of looking at wholesale, and we've now done it for 7 months, and my theory worked out. And I could kind of like, I could walk someone through all the reasons why wholesale worked for us. But to kind of sum it down, the volume game, we hit the volume game at that point. And farming is a volume game. You don't really make any money selling 25 meat birds. You make money selling 3,000 meat birds. Because your feed costs change. Now your feed costs went up, your infrastructure went up, but you start getting price breaks and different stuff like that. So to answer that question in a simple way, we definitely started more on a homesteading side. But I tell people all the time, I don't feel like we homestead anymore. We have like a farm operation, and that's how we make all of our decisions. Our kids want a horse. We like raw milk, but the numbers don't make sense. And for us right now, everything is numbers driven because it's a business out now at this point. So that's kind of a quick journey of ours to where we're at now.
So when you say like you kept track of numbers, is that something that you've been like you're used to? Are you you're an accountant, or you just are kind of anal about finances? Because a lot of people are really bad at tracking numbers. That's me. I'm just like, oh, whatever, here, there, blah, blah, blah. And I know I'm in the red. I kind of don't want to know why or how.
So that is more me. My husband and I are two totally different people within this like business. And if you're married, which you are, you know that sometimes your differences are your biggest fights, but your best assets. Yes. And that is us. So numbers are my husband. He has a degree in finance. He runs numbers and spreadsheets. Yeah. He runs numbers and spreadsheets and does contract stuff every single day. We have jobs. The farm is not our job. I don't know how anybody starts a farm without its outside money. But spreadsheets are our thing. And so he has it. And one day, and this might, a personal plug, we don't have it now, so there's no plug, but one day we want to put more of that stuff out because we have it to where we have spreadsheets that he has it all formulated. So that scale that I was talking about, when he put in, 50 meat birds, this increased the cost here of feed, infrastructure, processing, here's where our profit is. We actually saw that I don't even think we did 50. We made the jump from 25 to 100 because we actually lost money at 50 with our farm.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. That's good to know.
We didn't, but that's because that's our those were our processing cost, travel, our feed. And so these formulas matter. And that's why I'm really big about, you can take the information that you're receiving from social media, but it's so dependent. And so that's why you got to know the numbers. And so that's why I say at one point I want to put these out because again, we made the jump from I think 100 birds to 300 because we lost money at 200 because it wasn't enough of that. And so knowing those formulas, and that's the same thing with pigs. We just talked meat birds. We did our first year 15 pigs. We'll finish out 120 this year.
Holy crap.
I'm
good for you.
We run out all it's crazy. And then even with lamb, it's the same thing. But to answer your question of that, numbers are not my thing. Numbers are Dustin's thing that come easily. But that is one of the biggest things. So even for the wholesale part, that's why I stand on the platform that I say wholesale does not have to be a bad thing. The reason why people do so horrible in wholesale is because, and here's the main thing, if anybody has ever been asked to do wholesale, most of the time they'll say, hey, what's your wholesale percentage? And they'll say, hey, we're looking to do 30% off. So your vendor. Well, you don't have a 30% margin on all of your products.
Right.
And so you may have a 70% on something, which there's nothing that I think we have 70% on. But you may have a 70% on something and 6% on something else. Like bacon, we barely have a profit margin on bacon because you barely get any bacon. Right. And so if you do a flat 30, then a lot of times the things that sell the fastest actually have the lowest profit margin. And so then you look and you're like, why are we not making any money because we're selling so much? Well, you just did a flat 30%. So where we came back, we know exactly what our profit margins are. So therefore, instead of doing a flat, we said, this is the wholesale number we'll sell it for. So here's retail. Here's what you can buy it from us. So we have a margin in every single product. So that's why wholesale doesn't have to be bad. You can't just kind of wing it.
Yeah, you better know what your numbers are. That makes sense. And like you said, you can't make it just, doing 20, like a run of 25 meat birds.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to, this spinoff that my wife and I just finished of that Narcos show. It's like, it's all about volume.
It's
You
all
can't just
volume.
do it on a kilo or two of Coke. I need pallets of Coke.
Yeah. And now I'm a whole drug lord.
That's right.
That's the clip that you're gonna take and put somewhere that's gonna get me in trouble. No, just kidding.
Get clicks.
But yes, that is something that we learned really quickly that I was like, oh wow, this is different than I thought, because, and I'm kind of vocal about this for people, there is a misconception, in my opinion, in the homesteading and small farming community, that it's like this whole raise one, sell one, like raise it, put it in your freezer, and then sell one, you offset your costs. And I'm like, it's not always that black and white. It may feel like it is, and some things are. Cattle, I believe, is one of those that now it took like 3 years or 2 years to grow with, but cattle, I think, is one that maybe, but I don't feel like it's always that black and white. And I was having a conversation with a friend of ours that was like, hey, we may want to get into meat birds. And I was like, do it. I'll help you. Just go for it. And she was like, I'm thinking we're going to do 30. And I said, let's plug some numbers in. And she didn't save money. Now, remember, we're not comparing to Walmart, totally different thing. But for the product, it was cheaper for her to buy from us. Now, it wasn't even a sales pitch. That's like, she knows what we feed. She knows how we do it. It was cheaper for her to buy from us until she did 100 of them. And that was where I was like, the numbers matter. So if you want the experience of doing it, and you want to have them in your backyard and you want your kids to see self-processing, that's totally fine, and I'll never dog that. But if you go in saying, I want to save some money, but maybe you have another job or labor is going to be a really big thing, it's not, there's a misconception there. And I think that that's why a lot of people maybe aren't as happy with some of the decisions that they make, or don't really understand why maybe they're not like saving money. I think it's more than that. It's not us.
90% of the time, it's an expensive hobby.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's understood. And if that's okay, if it is, it's like going fishing. Like, you don't go fishing to really catch your dinner, like for everything you just put into it. Or hunting, honestly, for that example. Like, I feel like hunting has one of those other things that's like, oh yeah, we put meat in our freezer. I'm like, that was a really expensive meat after you bought everything, but that's fine. But like, you put meat in your freezer and you had a hobby, and that's okay. But homesteading a lot of times is in that same category, and
it absolutely
I feel like we're not always like talking about that.
Yeah, it can be a financial drain for sure, and I think it's learning anything new takes a lot of time, takes a lot of skill, patience for sure. And if you can't really afford it, well, then you just learn how to do it cheaper, or it just eats a hole in your wallet. And if you can afford for it to eat a hole in your wallet, good for you.
Right. But I feel like people don't always know that, and that makes me sad, because then I feel like there's a lot of people that it puts them in a worse bind, and it would have been better for them. And it sounds very salesy, but it would have been better for them to just support a local farmer. Do some things, but then go support a local farmer, because
that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Yeah. But homesteading, even for myself, like I just mentioned, like, we love raw milk, but we go down the road and we buy it from somebody who has 15 of them, because to have a dairy cow out there produces a lot of milk, but the time and the equipment that we need to add, can buy the $5 or whatever dollars per gallon that she does for like the next 5 years before I would break even. And so I don't have to do it all. And I feel like there's a little bit of that misconception that we have to do it all. And that's what homesteading is. Then you're fully self-sufficient. And I think self-sufficiency also includes knowing other people and knowing
Yeah.
the source.
Yeah. It's a completely unattainable goal to be 100% self-sufficient. It just there's we live in a day and age where there's just too many inputs.
Yeah.
Like just pick something and like, well, can you make that thing? Yeah, I can make that thing. Okay, what about the parts to make that thing? Like, got me there.
Right,
so
right.
just anything like that. Going back a little bit further.
Okay.
Why? Like, what motivates you to raise pigs, chicken, lamb?
There are not enough of us doing it to make a difference at all. Even if you are like, once you kind of get into this community, you feel like everybody's doing it. Like the farmers market community, when we started getting into it, I was like, oh my gosh, they have it too. They have it too. Oh my gosh, there's so much competition. And then I realized, no, there's like not even at all competition. They're not my competition. Walmart's convenience is my competition. Yes. And so we are still so inconvenient to most people, which is why it's like we go out of our way to deliver. We go out of our way to make bundle packages. We go out of our way to do all these things because I'm not competing against the other farm that's doing pasture-raised pork. I'm competing against Walmart that you can get everything at. So anyways, the why is because there's not enough of us doing it. So we're not making any difference whatsoever. Like the entire Oklahoma, which is where I live, like all of us that do like pastured chicken are like a drop in the hat of Tyson, which is in Arkansas next door. Like we're not even close. And well, my eye, did you see that on my eye?
No.
It's stuck. It's stuck to my contact. But I think that's what's one of the whys. It's like I didn't just choose to do something for the fun of it. It's something that's very needed. Everybody needs to eat, and we need more quality, and there's not enough of us. And I really do like it. I mean, it really sucks sometimes, but I like it.
As long as there's more good days than bad days, right?
Yes. That's a big part of it. I mean, there's a lot of hard things, but it's one of those things that you don't really have a choice to not push through. And so I think it has taught me a lot of those type of things. Like I don't have a choice to just be like, I just want to go inside and watch TV. This feed sack is too heavy or whatever. Like I cannot make that decision. So, but I think that's our why. That's our why at this point now. We love having a customer base. We love feeling like we're making a difference.
Do you feel like you have to chase down customers constantly, or like trying to flip people into, wanting to pursue this more natural, wholesome meat, like lifestyle?
Sometimes yes, because there's still so much education to be done. There's points that I'm like, oh yeah, everybody knows what local farming is. Everybody knows. And then I'll see a social media post that'll somebody, and it's never from a judgment point of view. It's like oh my gosh, there's still so much education. But I'll see this post that somebody said, I really want to support like local or buy fresher meat. And someone commented back and said, I always buy all of my meat from Sam's because they have a butcher there. And it's like local and they butcher it. And I was like, that's not what that's
really funny.
I know. I like felt really bad to be like Dumbo. But they just named it butcher. And like that's not what that is. That's still like commercial meat coming in from wherever, and they're like cutting it up because Sam's can make more profit on those cuts.
Yes.
Okay, so then that being said, like there's still so much education to be done. There's something
like that lemon tree girl this week. Have you seen that video?
I commented on it. I was
Oh,
probably in my like snarky phase, and I was like, this is why I'm farming, so my children don't like.
yes, exactly.
I mean, oh yeah, no, there is a lot of that. So yes, there's times that I feel like I have to hunt down people, but yet I'm trying to take an educational point of view, and but at the same time, like those that care, they care, and those that care, there's still a lot of people like they just don't care. And then also the grace that I have to kind of like understand is like there are a lot of people that want to eat better, but there is not
Hmm.
enough money. And
Yeah.
yes, you could go down the path of like, well, you didn't have to go get that Starbucks. You didn't have to get your nails done and stuff. And like, there are still people that aren't doing anything for themselves, and there's still not enough money
Yep.
to buy better food. And so I understand that. So then that kicks in the motivation on this side that says, what do I have to do with other local farmers? What do I have to do to get these costs even lower and lower and lower, more accessible? Like, what are my ideas? So there's also that bit of grace. But I had this conversation with somebody the other day that, and it doesn't really matter if you're a churchgoer or not. If you are, you'll understand this more, and if you're not, you'll still get it. But churches of a denomination, oftentimes, I told somebody I don't want to be the church of farming. And what I mean by that is a lot of times churches just share patrons back and forth. So you don't like this church anymore, so then you just go to another church of the same and they just share denominations, but nobody's actually pulling from the community. You're actually not growing your, I mean, somebody's going to hear this and be like, no, but you're not actually like converting people. You're just passing
Yep.
patrons around, if that makes sense.
Right.
So using that example, I was like, I don't want to be a church of farming. I don't want to just do better marketing. So therefore, this person who already bought pork chops from a local farmer now just buys them from me because I did better marketing. Like then we're not actually making any progress. I just grew my customer base, but I pulled it from you.
Yeah.
So that's where there's like
Like poaching customers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And not even intentionally. Like, I mean, I don't
Right.
even know how. Right. But it's like,
Well,
if you
it's
do
like
it-
for that, it's like the let the best man win type thing in that regard. But it also, to your point, like everybody needs more customers. It's not
Right.
like, you're stealing my customers or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And I know that it happens because I
Everyone's gotta
know
grow.
lots of my customers say, oh, yeah, we used to buy it, blah, 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 but we like, and it's like, it makes me happy for my pocketbook. But at the same time, I'm like, did I actually change anything by becoming another farmer? So that's why it's like
Right.
my brain is always trying to be like, what pocket do I need to hit that isn't already doing this? And so that sometimes gets hard. So to answer that question of like, do you constantly feel like you're chasing after them? Yeah, I'm trying to, like, I still feel like I'm trying to chase after those that aren't already supporting local farmers market people. I already have the ones that are. They're an easy get. But that doesn't really like meet the bottom line for the whole purpose.
What kind of techniques or practices and methods are you using in your firm, like rotational grazing or like a movable chicken tractor, things like that?
Yeah, so we definitely do all of the popular terms. And I say that because, in every industry, there's like the popular terms, and there's a lot of greenwashing, even in farming, where it's like I even caught my own self doing it. I said, oh yeah, non-GMO, whatever. And I'm like, there's not even a GMO of that product. It's the same where you see like on, I don't know what it was recently. It was like a food product, and it was like gluten-free. I'm like, gluten is not in yogurt. Like, it never has, so those type of things. So I try not to do that, but we do rotational grazing. So we have hogs, we have lambs, we've had cows, and we do hot wire training. So we do single strand high tensile wire. We train them to it, and then we move them quite often. The sheep don't get moved as much as the pigs do because they don't make a mess like the pigs do. but we do still move them at least every week because that reduces, like, we don't have to deworm then. There's like, those are the parasitic issues really pretty much get eliminated at that point. And so, yes,
Right.
rotational grazing. And then meat chickens, yes, they are in movable tractors. We kind of did a mosh up of a lot of different designs, and we've had like 6 different designs. Like, we started a little one, and then we were like, okay, we like this, went to this. And when I say I did not I did not build these things. I support it. That is, I didn't come with that type of skill set. So we've had multiple designs, but that gets moved every single day. We've seen great success on the land for those tractors. Like, it does what it's intended to do. It puts them on fresh pasture while keeping them safe from predators, but also it regenerates the land. That grass is amazing shortly after. And so we try to work kind of things together. So, like, we'll use the sheep first, and they'll really cut down the grass because I can't pull a tractor through 2-foot tall grass. So they'll really cut it down, and then the chickens go, and then the pigs go after. And then we try to rest the land for at least 60 to 90 days. And that's about, that's I feel like the essence of regenerative ag. I think some other parts of regenerative is like working things together. So we have like our brooder for the chicks, and then we scoop out all of that bedding, and then that goes on our compost, and that compost is used in the garden. We have about a 3rd-acre garden, and then that's produce that we put in our bundles. That's also excess that goes back to the pigs. And then I use those vegetables to make chicken stock from the chickens that I just raised. And then that chicken stock I throw back to the pigs. And so everything kind of works together. And that's where there's almost pulls in like a permaculture part about how can you design things that work better together. And there's a lot of buzzwords to use, but in the end, there's different practices. In the end, I say none of my animals have ever seen a cement floor. They don't live in a barn. So yes, so you can throw around forested pork and pastured pork, and but in the end, it's not commercial, like very far from it. So,
what type of pigs are you running? Breed?
So we have a heritage cross. We started with, here's a lesson that anybody can listen to and learn. We started with straight Berkshire, like pure bloodline. But here's our very novice mistake that we made. So we found a really great breeder, and they did show pigs. And so we don't do show pigs, obviously. And we could get, you're probably already knowing where this is going. And it's so novice, like, it's like, duh. So they would have a litter, and these would be show pig worthy, and these would not. And in our head, we were like, we give them a great life, and they give us great meat, and that's great. And this one would have a little kinked, ear, and this one would, like, there was never anything like disease wrong, but they definitely
it's just looks cosmetic. Yeah,
correct. It was cosmetic. And so my mind, it was like, oh, it's like those imperfect vegetables, like, yay, this is such a great idea. The problem is that it's similar to like German Shepherds. Purebred German Shepherds have horrible hip problems because in the animal world, when you crossbreed stuff, you naturally are taking out some of the weak parts of an animal. That's why whether you believe in like evolution or creation evolution, like things have evolved to better because the weakest don't survive. So what was happening was we were getting the weakest of the weak. And we would lose some of them, and we'd have like respiratory issues or like a hip issue, and there was never disease, but they didn't grow super fast. And we were kind of, we hadn't raised pigs before, and it was like the 4th round that this breeder didn't have any available. So we went and just got some crosses, heritage crosses. So like Duroc, Hampshire, blue butt, spotted, so all heritage but like crossed. And we had them almost kind of at the same time, and it was like, what are these pigs? They were growing faster, they rooted
a bunch of freaks.
I was like, what are you? And we've done multiple rounds with this crossbreed, and And we just found, like, we said it to a vet or somebody one time, and they were like, well, yeah, because like you're getting the worst of purebred, and they're genetically probably having more issues because you're constantly just pulling out the best parts of them. I'm like, oh. So that was a long-winded story to say heritage cross.
Those also make like the best dogs too. Like there are some people that, you know, go well out of their way to, and for some reason, sometimes it's like a good reason, like livestock guardian dogs or something like that. But for the most part, mutts make the best dogs.
And I don't know a lot about that, which is probably why it didn't really occur to us. Like, I don't know much about purebred dogs and issues and non-issues, but it was regardless of that, it was very clear that once we made that shift, we have not had one death of a hog since then. We were losing sometimes 2 or 3 per round. And we've gone through cold, we've gone through hot, and we haven't had any issues since. And I think it mattered. I think that there was something about that wasn't working. And that doesn't mean that's not wouldn't work for everybody, but it just like constantly was not working for us.
Yeah. In your spreadsheet, I'm going to assume that you're using Cornish cross for your meat birds.
Yep, we did.
Just because of the turnaround time.
When we first got into meat birds, we actually ran Cornish cross and like a Freedom Ranger at the exact same time because we didn't know. We didn't know what we'd like. We liked the Freedom Ranger like taste. It's a little bit of a darker meat. Like, this sounds really weird, but like tasted like chicken. It was just a really deep chicken flavor. But yes, for production purposes, there is nothing that's going to beat Cornish cross. The turnaround time, that is what your customer base is used to: heavy breasted white meat. And so there's still a customer base that's like, oh, I hate Cornish cross. They're, genetically this and yada yada, and I understand that, and there could probably be a producer out there that would do well with not doing Cornish cross, but the numbers don't add up, and my customer base is not my fellow like homesteader necessarily,
or like the crunchy of the crunchy. Yeah,
correct. They're not, like, they're usually already doing it. And so my customer base has to be like, oh, this tastes just like what I'm used to, but better. So Cornish cross.
Yeah, and it's like, how far do you want to go to have, the best food of all time? Like, you gotta draw the line somewhere. Otherwise, you're gonna eat like chicken that's worth like $100 a pound or something. I don't know.
And I had that conversation with someone recently that they were like, oh, we love everything you do because we do a specialty blend. We've moved to that point where it's no corn, it's no soy. We have to buy it in bulk. We work with another farmer, we mill it, and that pulls in a huge niche of a person to not have commercial feed. But I had this conversation with someone that's like, I love what you do, but I'm just really against Cornish cross and stuff. And I said, I hear you, I promise. Just based on numbers, I'm just letting you know. She's like, I can't find anybody that's going to do it that way. And I said, just based on numbers, letting you know, running the cost, because I've run them, I've raised them before, your whole bird would be about $64.
Oh my God. That's wild.
Right. Which is why there is no such thing as a small mid farm that doesn't do some type of, now there are some that do, what's the other one? The American breast, BRE.
Yes. SSE, I think.
Yes, which they grow longer than Cornish cross, but I think they still put on a significant amount of meat, and I still think they're not as long as the other ones. They still don't forage, like, because that's the other thing, people want the other ones because they apparently forage better. And I'm like, probably so, but I don't see it. I don't see how it's not gonna it's not going to make it very far in a market, and
That's
just
right.
to the cost of it. So
I was selling eggs to a couple of nurses one time, and one of them asked me if my chickens were fed an only vegetarian diet. And I pretty much laughed in her face.
right.
Like, I don't think that exists. And if it does, that chicken's inside and not eating any bugs.
No, that is, I
Or,
mean, that's literally the best sentence that you
yeah.
can say of like, so a chicken actually, they'll like, and maybe you wouldn't go as crazy, but like, this, like a chicken will literally eat another chicken. It'll eat
Yeah.
a mouse. It'll like, they are carnivores. They will,
Hmm.
I've seen videos of people dumping their whole deer, like, and the chickens just,
Oh, yeah. They cleaned up my deer carcass real nice. Yeah.
oh yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, not to be rude about it, but like, if you wanted a chicken like that, that's an indoor chicken, 100%.
Yep.
Because that, and the fact that indoors they probably have eaten themselves, if I'm being.
Oh, yeah. And like they gotta, you see those photos and like the commercial egg layers, like they gotta burn their beaks so they don't
Mhm.
peck each other to death
Right.
and all
Because
that stuff.
that's natural, right?
Hmm.
I know.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions that makes me go like,
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. So the pigs, you start off with the wrong breed, let's say, and
yeah.
then you turn that around. So what's another something that you tried that failed or didn't work well?
Yeah. So animal wise, there's not an animal that we've done. We had 2 cows, but they're gone, and we don't have enough land to run enough that it makes sense. It makes more sense for us to partner with someone who's doing like grass fed and have that as part of our website than go
Yeah.
lease land at this point right now.
You said you're on
Um,
3 acres?
no, we have 7. We have
7. Okay.
Yeah. And so we just don't have the land for cattle. So there's not another animal that we've done that we haven't stuck with. There within all of those have been mistakes. Predator issues were a really big problem when we first did meat chickens. Like we outfitted like a barn stall, and it was great. It was a great design. Like we still put the chicken wire, not chicken wire, we did the hardware cloth like on it, but we didn't go all the way up. So like it's a normal barn stall, and there was an owl that got in and took out, like 40 of them. And then it would be, so stuff like that. And then, oh, this one was the worst one. We had new piglets on this side of the barn stall. So it's like true barn stalls that the previous owners had horses. Piglets were in here, and we were hot wire training them so they could come out of the barn stall and go to our hot wire training pen. And then we put our new meat chickens in this one. Well, before we had always kind of subdivided this little barn stall, but we didn't because we had more that time. Well, they found like one little crevice in the stall, and the meat chickens, oh my gosh, I kid you not. I remember walking out there and I was like, wow, the pigs are so active. And I go in the pig side and I see a little chicken in there, and I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And it's like pops out, and I'm like, no. And the pigs are like, "Nah." And then I watch another one come out, and it like another one, and I see another one. I'm like, oh my God, these chickens are marching to their death. They would literally like, come out the little hole, and then the pigs would just like, psh. And so the pigs were just eating all of these chickens. And I'm like, how long has this been going on?
Oh
Like
my
never
gosh.
in my mind did I say I need to, but see, these are the things that like you have to almost, I don't say have to, like you can be better, but like it's going to happen one time. But it's like, okay, we raised 100 in this brooder, so we put a partition because it was easier for food and water. Okay, well now we put 300 in here, so we need to move the partition, not thinking through that partition always stopped them from getting to this side, which had the crevice, because we had done 8 rounds of 100 before, so we knew how to do it. But we make one adjustment and they all die. So there's things like that. And then we had done probably 5 or 6 rounds out in the pasture in a chicken tractor, never had an issue. And then one day we go out there and it's a massacre. And we're like, what happened? Something got in. And it was hardware clocked. It was like everything was fine. And we're like, how did this get in? And we're like, oh man, that really stinks. So we clean it all up, move them. Next night, same thing. Next night, same thing. I mean, we literally were losing like 20 every single time. At one point, Dustin took the pickup truck, put it in the other side of the pasture, and sat there with a gun trying to see what the heck was coming every night. Well, then he was like, I'll put a trail cam up. Next night, one was a raccoon, one was a fox, and the next one was a not a bobcat. Yeah, a bobcat. And so he was
wow.
like, yeah. So it was like
Go to buffet for those things.
Right.
Wow.
But those are the things. It's like we had done 5 or 6 rounds and nothing ever got in. And so that then introduced, and we lost so much during that round, and we were banking on it, and stuff like that. So then we ran an electric wire around it because it was like, we can't put all this money and work in and lose that. So that wasn't necessarily like a one-word answer of like, yeah, we tried this and it didn't work. I guess the answer is there isn't an animal that we haven't put out here that we haven't had a complete and utter failure on every single one of them. There's not one. Sheep have been a little bit easier. I guess there hasn't been.
That's surprising.
Yeah. Sheep are easy. I think every homestead or small farm needs to have sheep. I think they're so vital for they're so great on the grass. They're such great foragers. They don't get out like goats. Like we single strand keep them in, double strand sometimes when we have a ram in there. They lamb fine on pasture by themselves. We had like negative 10-degree weather and they all lambed, of course.
What breed is this?
We do a Dorper Katahdin. I think that's how you say that word. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So our ram is a full-blood Katahdin, and then the ewes are Dorper Katahdin. They're wonderful meat. It sells really well. We sell out like crazy. We can never keep it in stock. And we don't do grain fed. So your input costs are outside of infrastructure, like first getting, like if someone was doing it for the very first time and you needed to get reels and hot wire and stuff like that. Outside of that, there's no other input cost. And especially if you're lambing, then, I mean, obviously there's more details to this, but if you're lambing, then your lamb is free. So then now you've only paid for your butcher cost. And then your lamb is very high priced, obviously, because you don't get much, but it's a premium product. So you can sell it premium, and us being grass fed only, it hits another market too. Yeah. Where we've gotten in a little bit of issue with lamb is that we're not lambing enough. I mean, sheep take a long time to grow a flock. It's not like pigs where I can just call up find a breeder and bring 10 more in. We have to like lamb, and then those lambs, some go and some stay, and then we lamb, and then we lamb. So, I mean, it can be 8-9 years before we'd actually be lambing what our, demand is. But our problem is if you buy a lamb that's weaned or ready to go, most people are looking for $180 to $200 a lamb. Well, then add butcher costs on top of that, I've pretty much lost most of my profit at that point. Oh. So lamb is a hard one. It's a long game one, in my opinion, if you don't grain feed, because that's another thing is it's very hard for us to find ones that are not grain fed. So it's more of a long term, if that makes sense. But once you like build that, it just kind of hangs out there. So.
Is there anything that you process yourself, or your scale or like your volume is so much, you just like, we have to,
correct,
for the quality cuts and everything, we just have to send it to, how's that been?
So there's 2 reasons why we don't process ourselves. And we first processed, we self-processed our chicken in Oklahoma, because remember, every state is very different for this. So in Oklahoma, you can self-process a certain amount of poultry only. And still sell it to the public. I believe it has to be whole, so you cannot do cuts. and it has to be under 10,000 birds, I think, which is a lot. Like I'm thinking like
A lot of birds.
10,000 birds on their own. But I think that still could be like you could have a facility on your property that's not inspected, so you could still scale it. But so we did self-process in the beginning, but once we got to 100 birds, it wasn't something that we wanted to do. Also, whole birds are hard for your customer base. They want breasts, they want drumsticks, and so we had to have cuts. So that's number one, is the scale of it.
Yeah.
Correct. So number one is the scale. Number two, we cannot sell in a store with it not being at a USDA facility. We can't ship, which we don't ship because we don't have enough. We can't even keep up with our local demand. But so that's that side. The other side is for pigs, for sheep, for cows. We cannot self-process and sell. That is only that you can, I believe, if it's like custom, like it has to, like they would have to pay for the animal and then you could like self-process it. But that's not our customer base. Our customer base is somebody who wants it dropped off and delivered on their doorstep with a pretty label that has the date and the logo. And then we're in the stores that like they go in and it's a pretty glass, they want to look at it. So volume and the regulations, we don't self-process anything. And time, dear Lord, I feel like all we do is process at that point. Yeah.
There was we did some older meat birds. We processed those, and then we processed the roosters from our new flock. And between those, it was like, one weekend we did one, the next weekend we did the other. And you know what? I'll do it, but I don't enjoy that. I do. It was not the fun part of this endeavor, I guess. I don't know.
It's really time consuming. Like the first time we did it, it was like, it took us a full day to do that first round. Well, then they had to ice bath or however people do it. And then we had to do it all again the next day. Well, we don't always have 2 days in a row to devote. And so it was like, that was a big thing, is like, I'm not doing this every 6 weeks. And that's why I said after we went over 50, we couldn't get more than that done in a day either. And our quality started to kind of slip, which
because you're rushing and that makes sense.
Right. And that's not like even 6 weeks apart. Like I almost had to like remind myself when I was doing it, kind of I was like, oh yeah, forgot to take the esophagus thing out. And it's like, I almost had to kind of like,
or the lungs. Yeah.
And so the quality, I think, was not as good as somebody who's doing it quite often. So I think if we would have done maybe some weight comparison, I think we probably cut out more meat than a facility would too. Sure. So in the end, was it really a better deal? So
how long have you been working with your current processor?
Oh, that's a nightmare, to be honest. I hope they know.
Really?
Yeah. So Northeast Oklahoma, which is where we're at, actually really most of Oklahoma has no chicken processor. And there's a pretty large amount of us here that are doing meat birds. One of the closest ones is like an hour and a half to 2 hours south of us, but their price per bird is astronomical. They're Amish. We have a pretty big like Amish community in this part. And I think their heart is right. That's fine. They got into it for like, they don't have a minimum. So it's like, it's really great for homestead, where if you raise 25, it still saved you money. Because they have no minimum. Everyone else has a like 100 bird minimum. So your backyard person can't even bring it. So all of us in Oklahoma go to Arkansas.
That's interesting.
Because they have so many. They have so many processors there. But it's been really hard because so many of us go there. We're all competing for the same date. And we're all friends. So it's not like we'll literally even talk. Like we share crates because you put all the meat birds in those flat crates because that's how you keep them safe in its port. My brother-in-law made that mistake. Threw him in a trailer. Like they need to like, I know it's funny to like the non-farmer eye. It's like, oh my God, they're squishing them. I'm like, no, they're not dying. Trust me. So we share crates with each other because nobody needs the crates all at one time. And so
That makes sense. Yeah.
But we kind of compete for dates sometimes. We're working on trying to get one opened in this area. We actually kind of like farmers came together and basically went to some of our favorite butchers and were like, will you put a facility? Because it's still a different facility. It's still totally different regulations, totally different equipment, different licenses. But a butcher is probably your closest that's going to be like excited to do that. We basically told one of the butchers, like, if you start this, we can guarantee about 40,000 birds your first month. Not just us.
Right.
Like,
but I mean, between everybody, that's a lot.
That's just, oh yeah. But that's all
like
of us.
10,000 a day.
Oh yeah. That's why we're like, if somebody opens it, we will. Some of us were like, do you need funding? Like, do you, I mean, I don't have money to send to them, but we were like, could we write like letters of intent? Light just went out. For like a bank, because if they would bring like a letter of intent to the bank and say like we guarantee we will bring this product to you, which should guarantee cash flow month one. So that's in the works, which would change so much for us. We drive 6 hours.
Oh, you currently drive 6 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the worst. It is the worst because you have to be there at like 5 a.m. So,
oh gosh, you have to leave at like midnight.
Well, Dustin had this past couple of rounds would leave at night because he doesn't do great driving from midnight to 5. And so he'd leave at night and basically sleep in their parking lot with the live birds in the back.
Oh gosh.
And then like wake up and drop them off. But that was actually not the hardest part. It was 6 hours with not a refrigerated trailer is in 100 and plus degree weather between Oklahoma and Arkansas in summer was not always a good thing. Yeah. He got back one time and I was like flinging them into the freezer. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Like they were not defrosted, but like it wasn't good.
Right.
So
you just pick up like those big Sportsman's like igloo coolers then? Is that like the
they come
temporary solution?
Well, so they come like they're already done in boxes because the way that they do them is like since they're doing so many, it's like they have a box. It has our logo on it and it has the quantity on it, and so it's all right there. The bigger farms, our friends, just take that box and just put them straight in their like cooler trailer, their freezer trailer, box trailer, whatever it's called. And then go back to their walk-in freezer and then they can just stack all their boxes. And it says, like 95 chicken breasts, 95 drums, and then they can just pull it. They can do inventory easily. We obviously aren't at that point, but we're still churning through a lot of product. And so at this point we get it back and then we have to pull it out and sort it and put it in all of our freezer. But we are going to have a walk-in this year.
Nice. Very nice.
That's the thing that scaling is so crazy is that our demand is there. Like our demand is beyond there. We're always out. We're always telling people no. There's probably 5 more stores that want us, but we don't have it. There's restaurant contracts. There's catering contracts. There's all of this stuff. And it's not always that. It's not that we can't raise enough. It's that we don't always have a place to put it. So that's that aspect. And it's like the infrastructure is a whole big thing. It's like I can raise 100 more pigs, but can I afford the feed for it? Because the capital is the hardest part. And like that's the business side that I wasn't exactly prepared for. It was like, oh yeah, scale it, do more pigs. And it was
send it. Yeah.
Right. But it was like, okay, to do 100 more pigs is going to cost me $20,000 more in feed. And I'm not going in rounds because if you don't want an inventory gap, you have to keep it going the whole time. And you're raising 3 rounds of pigs before you're ever making a profit from any of them that you're raising. And so none of your profit has come in before you need to go buy more piglets and more feed.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a constant struggle of you don't, that's the reason why it's so hard is because we just don't have that capital as a small family farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that part being a challenge, what would you say the best part about farming is?
I feel like I'm doing something purposeful, and there can be purpose in everything. So I would never, like, there's literally purpose in everything you do. But I really do like this lifestyle. I really like, I do not like the city stuff. Like, every single time I'm in the city, and Tulsa is our closest big city. It's not even that big, but I'm like, oh my gosh, why are there so many cars? What are you all doing?
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, so I definitely like more small town living. I love the nature aspect. I love that that's what we do for fun. Like, so I love that it's affording me that opportunity because we want to live here and our jobs can afford it, but we want to do this all the time. So
yeah,
farming is, while it's not, making us millionaires, we're getting to a point where our farming is supporting the lifestyle we want to live. And that's the part where I feel like we've accomplished something, is that we're not making money and then living a lifestyle. We're starting to bridge the gap a little bit more, that we are living a lifestyle and it's making us the money.
No, I think that's an excellent way to do it too, is just being able to make a living in the lifestyle that you want, whether it be partial or full-time or anything like that. Because right now we're kind of in like a weird middle ground. Obviously wintertime, not growing anything. And a couple of weeks ago, we got rid of all of our chickens because we're just starting over. And so, getting eggs, sourdough starter, or, bread or anything like that from other farms. So we're kind of like, instead of putting financial inputs here to try to, keep all that stuff going, we're kind of spreading it out. Because that's the other part of the lifestyle. It's like, it doesn't all, like we were talking earlier, it doesn't all have to be, you don't have to be selfish about it, right? It's like you can spread the love and support everyone else.
Yeah, that's our, like, the business side of one of our concepts is eggs are a really big draw for our customer base. I don't necessarily know if it's a loss leader, but it's definitely not a moneymaker. But it is one of those big draws. People are always looking for farm fresh eggs. So you can kind of get them in your loops, and maybe they'll try your chicken breast and then they're in your pork chops and stuff like that. The other part is, like, in the stores that we sell in, our eggs are there, and then they're using them the whole week. So it's like a little marketing tool in their fridge, like, all week long. And so there's a lot of brand awareness there. So you're not making a lot of money, but there's a huge benefit of having your eggs. So here's a little insider tip for everybody that probably doesn't know this, but we cannot keep up with the demand. I'm talking like about 90 dozen a week is what the demand was. Well, I'm not raising that many chickens. And so we were just always out. And I'm like, there's got to be something. Like, what do I do? And so I basically reached out to people that I knew were raising chickens, and I knew their feed. I knew that they're free range because we buy the same feed, because that's part of what we've done, is being able to help source this certain feed. And so I knew what they were doing. I know where they're living. And I basically said, hey, I have a proposition for you. This is what I need. This is what I can pay. And so I started sourcing eggs, and I bring them back. I have the packer's license. So there's different levels of licenses that you have to have in order to sell eggs off farm. So in Oklahoma, and it's like, you can do whatever you want if they come on your farm. You can throw a cow at somebody. But once you walk off this farm, like, everything has to be regulated. And so for eggs, if they're sold off farm, they need to be washed, they need to be candled, They need to be graded. They need to be labeled. They need to be dated. They need to be in a brand new container. And every state's very different with that. Ours, I feel like, are kind of in the middle. Some of it's silly, some of it's fine. But so I get all the eggs. I still wash them. I candle them. I label them, and then I sell them. And then I'm able to keep up with the demand. And so that was our very first kind of introduction to not always how do we scale, but who do we scale?
Sure. I think that's smart. And I think it helps everybody.
Correct. And that was my intention with it, was it's like, there are a lot of people I know that have no intention of doing the business side that I've done and the marketing that I've done. Marketing comes easy to me. Finances come easy to Dustin. Marketing comes easy to me. And there's a lot of people that are like, I don't want to share the details of my farm with the public. And I'm like, totally hear that. Live your life. That's great. But you will never sell a single thing if you don't share your life. Like, that's how sales works. So if you don't want to, here's some money and I'll go do it. And it's great for them. They love it. I go and pick it up, or they deliver, and I do all the work, and they still.
It's the easy button for them. Yeah.
Correct. And so it works really well. And so that's kind of a concept that we are probably going to use for some other scaling purposes. There's so many ideas rolling around in our head of how do we scale certain things without us buying more land or us leasing more land. But there's a lot of education that we can bring, a lot of like help to people. And so there's some ideas that we have of maybe helping people offset the cost of something that they want to do by raising some for us, if it's done our way, our feed, our method. Friend to friend, I guess this is like a live pod or like a big podcast, but friend to friend, I'm still weary about it because I don't want it to turn into, and this is like faith talk, but like, I don't want it to turn into this large corporation. And now I've turned into Vital Farms, who was sources from everywhere and then charges a massive amount. So it's like, I don't want to do that. But at the same time, like, how am I gonna meet the demand then? So I'm still rolling it around.
Yeah.
Get back to me on it.
But I mean, like, little things, there's oh man, I'm totally blanking on the name now. His name's Jordan Green, and I think it's J something Green Farms. But the stuff that he sells in his farm store, he does like all his own pigs and everything. But in his farm store, he's got beeswax and honey and all these other things from other farms. And so you guys could do the exact same thing, goat milk, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that, like, eggs was kind of our first thing. Then we did sourdough. I could not keep up with the sourdough want. So it was like, oh, I guess I can't do sourdough. And well, instead I found somebody local that does sourdough, and I pre-sell it. And then I send her the number. She makes it. I go pick it up, and it's part of our bundle. And so those make sense to me. The part of like raising the animals that it's kind of integrated into, and I don't want it to turn into like a quality questioning of like, oh, white label things, because there's a lot of farms. Oh my gosh, a lot of farms that like everything's local, but it's not. It's still coming in from somewhere, and then it's just repackaged. And if that's what you do, that's totally fine. But I think it's deceptive if you're using terms that are saying like everything we sell comes across our farm. Well, yeah, comes across your farm, but so I'm really trying to figure out like how to still have the, that like it's local, it's ours, it's our quality, but like
the authenticity of it. Yeah.
Being authentic about it. But also at the same time, I'm really tired of telling people I'm out of everything.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you do? Because back to you can't do it all.
Correct. So that's this year's figure out.
Wrapping up here.
Yes.
What would you tell people that want to get started?
Don't. No, I'm just kidding. That's always like my
stay out of my territory.
No. It is literally like, do it. Like, one, do it because if you have an inkling, like, and a desire to do it, then it's so worth it. but then also like we need you. Like even if your desire is to live this type of lifestyle and have these more traditional skills, like that is so needed for our next generation too. Like even just that aspect, even if you just live this lifestyle for a little bit and teach your kids some of these like where do things come from, like that's going to better our next generation anyway. So the main thing would be like just do it if there's a desire. And then the other part would be that you can research yourself to paralysis. There's so much information out there. There's so many different opinions on how to do everything. You have to find that balance between not winging it and causing your family issues, but also not trying to find the way to do it. At some point, you have to buy the chickens and bring them home. Start small if you're scared of the numbers, but bring them home and realize, oh, wow, like there's this and this and this and this. And like, it's amazing how you find out what you find out for yourself in such a short period of time that would take you months to just continue to research. So
right.
I think finding the balance between not being stuck in research paralysis and not being stuck on that you have to buy a course or something like that, like, which could be great. I mean, I think that's amazing. We live in a time that there's not really a reason why you shouldn't be able to do something. We literally have you can, outside of like being a doctor, you can learn how to do everything. I mean, you probably could learn that too, but I don't know if I'd want that.
Yeah, you could.
You can learn everything now. So it's like, there's no excuse. I don't know how to do that. Well, go find a YouTube and try it. So
yeah,
that's my advice.
I don't want to learn how to do that.
Like, yeah, true.
Yeah.
So it's worth it. It's fun. And then find people that you trust and find people that have done it. And maybe there's a couple of really key people that I've watched and almost kind of just like tried their method. Like like I'm just going to watch like their kind of way of doing it because I've seen success in it. Instead of like all these different tips everywhere, because there's so many different variables, and then goes back to you can just really kind of question everything. So
yeah, no, I think that's great. Is there anything you wanted to expand on, or you don't think that we quite covered properly?
No, I mean, I think, I'm sure you just realized that I overly
no, this is perfect. No, this was perfect. I've had some guests that I've had to like, it was like pulling teeth to try to get answers out of it. So this is an excellent interview.
That
I
is
love
not
this very much.
my issue for sure. I did a podcast like 2 nights ago. I don't know how it like happened. They were like, I'd never do podcasts. Everyone's like, wow, so many podcasts. I'm like, I've done like 2. But same thing. It was like, okay, we should wrap this up. And no, I feel like we covered so much. I think this is great. I can't wait to listen to more of your podcast.
Well, great. You can probably listen to yourself tomorrow morning when it goes live. So
I don't know.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Lindsay. Where could people find you and learn more about your operation?
Yeah, so I post a lot, and so there's lots of information. So I'm on Instagram. I do have a Graham Acres Instagram, which is our business one. I have a personal one called Life with Linz. I'm on Facebook the same way. I'm on TikTok the same way. And I try to post tips and inspiration, and that's where you can find me. We obviously have a website, Graham Acres, as well. If you're local, we are only servicing local. So do not ask me if I ship. My answer is going to be no.
Excellent. I'll have a link for all that in the show notes. So,
well, thank you.
Great.
This was so fun.
Yes. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I am Matt DeRozier of Farm Hop Life. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and visit farmhoplife.com.
Inside of the city, the people are crazy, out of their minds. They ain't got a clue. We gone away, headed west for Montana. Left family and friends, all I got now is you. We both got new jobs, a house and a homestead, thinking this was the life, all that there'd be. That's when the work got in the way for me. Well, I started farm hop life. We'll come to your farm to help and to wander. Me and the family, a truck and an RV. Send us a message and there